Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Frederick Douglass.
Ooh, fascinating.
We're going to be exploring his autobiography,
Yeah.
narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass.
Mm,
Have you ever considered what it would be like not to know your own birth date?
mm,
That's how Douglass's story begins,
yeah.
and it immediately sets the stage for a life stripped of basic human rights.
It's a stark reminder that for Douglass and countless others,
Yeah?
their very existence was defined by the institution of slavery.
Mm.
Even the most fundamental aspects of identity were denied.
Douglass paints a vivid picture of life on Colonel Lloyd's plantation.
Uh-huh.
One of the most disturbing accounts is the brutal whipping of his Aunt Hester.
This wasn't just discipline. It was
Yeah.
a calculated act of terror.
Oh, wow.
The plantation owners wanted to instill fear and obedience,
Yeah,
not just in Aunt Hester, but in all the slaves who witnessed it.
right.
Imagine the psychological impact,
Yeah.
particularly on a young Douglass.
It's hard to even fathom. The trauma must have been immense.
Absolutely. And Douglass makes it clear that this wasn't an isolated incident.
Right.
Violence was woven into the very fabric of life on the plantation. It was the mechanism by which the slaveholders maintained control.
Douglass also describes something that I found particularly heartbreaking, the hierarchy that existed among the slaves.
Yeah.
Some were given slightly better treatment, even small privileges like trips to Baltimore.
This created a system of division and resentment that the slave owners could exploit. Even in the face of shared oppression, they fostered competition and mistrust amongst those they enslaved.
Wow.
Imagine even in chains being made to feel envious of another slightly longer chain.
It's a chilling example of the ways in which slavery dehumanized and fractured communities.
Precisely. And this brings us to a pivotal moment in Douglass's journey. His realization of the power of literacy. He overhears his master saying that learning would spoil the best nigger in the world.
It seems almost ironic. The slaveholders feared literacy, yet their attempts to suppress it only fueled Douglass's determination.
Right.
Why do you think they were so afraid of an educated slave?
Because an educated slave was a threat to the entire system.
No, okay.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
It allows you to question, to challenge,
Yeah.
to envision a different reality.
Right.
The slaveholders knew that if their slaves learned to read and write,
Yeah.
they would be able to see the injustice of their situation, and they might even be inspired to fight back.
So Douglass, despite facing incredible danger,
Uh-huh.
sets out to educate himself. He uses white children as his teachers,
Hmm.
even studying shipyard markings to learn the alphabet.
Wow.
What I find incredible is that he wasn't just driven by a desire for personal advancement,
No,
but by a deeper yearning for freedom.
absolutely. For Douglass, literacy wasn't simply about acquiring knowledge.
Yeah.
It was about claiming his humanity.
Wow.
It was about breaking free from the mental chains that bound him.
But this newfound knowledge also brought immense pain.
Yeah.
He became acutely aware of the horrors of his situation, but with no immediate means of escape. It must have been a tormenting realization.
Imagine being shown a map to freedom,
Right.
but told you could never follow the path.
Oh, wow.
That was Douglass's reality.
Right.
And it's here that we see the deep hypocrisy of the Christian slaveholders. They used religion, a faith built on love and compassion,
Yeah.
to justify their brutality.
It's a jarring contradiction.
Right.
Could you elaborate on how they twisted religious teachings to serve their own interests?
Douglass provides several examples.
Okay.
His master, a supposedly devout Christian, would use passages from the Bible to justify whipping his slaves.
Oh, wow.
He would argue that slavery was a divinely ordained institution,
Wow.
that Africans were cursed to be servants, and that it was his Christian duty to keep them in bondage.
It's sickening to see how they manipulated scripture to fit their own twisted agenda.
Indeed. And Douglass, having learned to read himself,
Can go through this deception. He understood that their interpretation of the Bible was not only wrong,
right,
but deeply immoral.
right,
This realization fueled his anger,
Ah.
his sense of injustice, and his determination to be free.
One of the most gut-wrenching examples of this hypocrisy is the murder of the slave Demby by Mr. Gore, the overseer.
Right.
Demby was killed simply for disobeying an order, and there were no legal repercussions. It's hard to believe that such a blatant justice could go unpunished.
This underscores the brutal reality that slaves were not considered human beings in the eyes of the law.
Wow.
They had no rights, no legal protections. Their lives were entirely at the mercy of their masters.
It's a chilling reminder of how deeply ingrained the system of slavery was in American society.
And it wasn't just physical violence that was used to control the slaves.
Oh.
Douglass describes the different types of cruelty he experienced,
Right.
highlighting the contrasting personalities of two slaveholders, Mr. Covey and Mr. Freeland. Yes, he recounts how Mr. Covey was relentlessly cruel, relying on physical abuse to break the slave's spirits, while Mr. Freeland, on the other hand, was more cunning and manipulative.
Exactly. Douglass's experiences with Mr. Covey and Mr. Freeland reveal that slavery wasn't just about physical domination.
Right.
It was about psychological control.
Oh.
It was about breaking the will and crushing the hope of freedom.
It's a testament to Douglass's resilience that he didn't let this cruelty break him. In fact, his fight with Mr. Covey proved to be a turning point.
That's right. Douglass describes it as a moment of reclamation,
Uh-huh.
a reassertion of his manhood. It was a physical fight, but also a symbolic one.
Right.
He fought for his dignity,
Yeah.
his self-worth,
Yeah.
his right to exist as something more than just another man's property.
And this fight, I believe, further solidified his resolve to be free.
Right.
Even though he remained enslaved, something shifted within him.
It's a crucial point in the narrative. Douglass doesn't shy away from describing the psychological toll of slavery.
Right.
He talks about the constant internal battle between hope and despair,
Yeah.
the longing for freedom juxtaposed against the terrifying risks of escape.
He even describes watching ships sail to freedom,
Mm-hmm.
a symbol of hope, but also a painful reminder of his own captivity. It must have been a constant torment.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Seeing freedom on the horizon, but being unable to reach it.
Right.
It speaks to the incredible resilience of the human spirit, that even in the face of such adversity, Douglass never gave up hope.
It's remarkable how even while enduring the horrors of slavery, Douglass never relinquished his dream of freedom. He meticulously planned his escape, a testament to his courage and strategic thinking.
Yeah.
His first attempt, however, ended in disappointment. The plan was intricate, involving several other slaves, and required immense trust and coordination.
Right.
The consequences of failure were severe, and unfortunately they were caught and imprisoned.
Yeah.
It must have been a devastating setback, not just for Douglass, but for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Did he ever describe how he coped with this failure?
Douglass doesn't dwell on the emotional impact,
Okay.
but he does highlight the psychological manipulation used by slaveholders to deter future escape attempts. They would often paint a terrifying picture of life in the North for runaway slaves, emphasizing poverty and danger.
Oh, wow.
It was a way to break their spirits and make them believe that freedom was actually worse than captivity.
It's incredible how they used fear and misinformation as weapons to maintain control.
Precisely. It was a way to reinforce the idea that slaves were incapable of surviving on their own,
Right.
that they needed the protection and guidance of their masters.
Douglass's eventual escape to New York is a testament to his unwavering determination.
Yeah.
He used a sailor's protection papers and his own quick thinking to make his way to freedom. It must have been an exhilarating feeling finally reaching that long sought-after goal.
He describes it as a moment of profound joy and relief.
Yeah.
He writes about the feeling of being reborn,
Wow.
finally being able to breathe freely.
Yeah.
He also speaks of the kindness he received from abolitionists like David Ruggles, who helped him navigate this new world.
His arrival in New Bedford, Massachusetts, challenged many of his preconceived notions about the North. He expected to find widespread poverty, but instead encountered a thriving, free Black community.
Right.
He even mentions his friend Nathan Johnson, a working man who lived a more comfortable and informed life than most slaveholders Douglass knew back in Maryland.
This contrast is crucial to understanding Douglass's evolving perspective.
Yeah.
It shattered the narrative that slaveholders propagated about the supposed misery and destitution of free Black people in the North.
Right.
It was a living example of the possibilities that freedom offered.
It's a powerful illustration of the transformative power of freedom. But even in the North, Douglass couldn't fully escape the shadow of slavery.
Right.
He talks about the constant fear of slave catchers and the danger faced by fugitive slaves.
Yeah.
The Fugitive Slave Act meant that they were never truly safe, always at risk of being captured and returned to their enslavers.
It's a sobering reminder that freedom,
Yeah.
even when achieved, was
Yeah.
precarious.
Right.
The Fugitive Slave Act, enacted in 1850, allowed for the capture and return of runaway slaves, even in free states.
Wow.
It essentially made the North complicit in the institution of slavery.
Douglass shares a chilling story about a free black man in New Bedford
Uh-huh.
who threatened to betray a fugitive slave.
Oh, wow.
The community held a meeting,
Okay.
and the president, a religious old gentleman,
Yeah.
actually recommended that they take the man outside and kill him.
This illustrates the deep sense of solidarity and self-reliance within the Black community.
Right.
They understood the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
And were willing to take extreme measures to protect one another from the threat of slave catchers.
It's both inspiring and deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
This incident speaks to the level of desperation and fear that existed even in a community known for its abolitionist sentiments.
Indeed. It highlights the limitations of freedom when the legal system itself is rigged against you.
Douglass also faced challenges finding work in New Bedford because of racial prejudice.
Yeah.
He was a skilled caulker, but white workers refused to work alongside him.
This is a crucial point.
Right.
Freedom from slavery didn't magically erase the deeply ingrained racism and discrimination that permeated American society.
Yeah.
Douglass encountered prejudice in housing, employment, and even in social interactions.
It's a reminder that the struggle for equality didn't end with emancipation.
Right.
It was just the beginning of a long and arduous journey.
Exactly. The fight for civil rights,
Yeah.
for equal opportunity, for
Yeah.
true justice, continued long after the abolition of slavery.
Douglass's unwavering determination shines through even in these difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
He found other work and quickly became involved in the abolitionist movement.
Wow.
It's incredible to think that as a former fugitive slave,
Yeah.
he was willing to risk his own safety to speak out against slavery.
That's what makes Douglass such a remarkable figure.
Right.
He understood that his personal experiences, his story,
Yeah.
had the power to inspire others,
Yeah.
to challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
and to push for meaningful change.
He discovered William Lloyd Garrison's abolitionist newspaper, The Liberator, which he described as my meat and my drink. He was deeply inspired by its passionate condemnation of slavery and its unwavering advocacy for the rights of Black people.
Garrison's The Liberator played a significant role in the abolitionist movement.
Right.
It provided a platform for voices like Douglass's,
Yeah.
amplifying their message and reaching a wider audience. It was a powerful tool for raising awareness and mobilizing support for the cause of abolition.
Douglass also became increasingly critical of the hypocrisy he saw within American Christianity. He observed that many churches condemned petty theft while turning a blind eye to the sin of slavery.
He saw firsthand how religion was often used to justify and perpetuate the very evils it was supposed to condemn.
Right.
This contradiction fueled his outrage and his desire to expose the moral bankruptcy of those who claimed to be followers of Christ while supporting a system built on human suffering.
He even quotes a poem that criticizes slaveholding preachers
Yeah.
who loved heavenly union while profiting from the exploitation of their fellow human beings.
This poem highlights the jarring dissonance between the professed values of many Christians and the brutal reality of slavery.
Right.
It speaks to the hypocrisy and complicity of those who used religion as a shield for their own economic and social interests.
Douglass's narrative is a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit.
Yeah.
Despite facing unimaginable cruelty and hardship, he never lost his faith in humanity or his determination to fight for justice.
Right.
His experiences in the North,
Yep.
both the progress and the persistent challenges, paint a complex picture of freedom in a society still grappling with the legacy of slavery. It's striking how Douglass's narrative transcends his personal story to become a powerful indictment of the entire system of slavery and the society that allowed it to flourish.
His story isn't just a historical account.
Right.
It's a social commentary,
Yeah.
a moral exposé.
He masterfully unveils the hypocrisy that lay at the heart of American society,
Right.
particularly within the Christian church. His critique of the church is particularly scathing.
Yeah.
He doesn't hold back in calling out those who preach love and compassion while simultaneously supporting a system built on the exploitation and dehumanization of their fellow human beings.
He was acutely aware of the dissonance between the teachings of Christ
Yeah.
and the actions of those who claim to be his followers. Douglass saw firsthand how religion was twisted to justify oppression,
Yeah.
and he refused to let this hypocrisy stand unchallenged.
His words are as relevant today as they were back then,
Uh-huh.
challenging us to confront the uncomfortable truths of our past and to consider how the legacy of slavery continues to shape our present.
Douglass forces us to look in the mirror
Right.
and ask ourselves some difficult questions.
How do we reconcile our ideals of freedom and equality
Mm-hmm.
with the systemic injustices that persist in our society? How do we ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated in the future?
Douglass's story is a powerful reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing.
Yeah.
His journey from enslaved child to outspoken abolitionist is an inspiration to us all.
It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure, and that each of us has a role to play in the struggle for a more just and equitable world.
What strikes me most about Douglass's narrative is his unwavering belief in the power of education
Right.
and his profound understanding of the inherent dignity and worth of all people,
Yes.
regardless of race or social status.
He saw literacy as a key to unlocking human potential and a weapon against oppression.
Absolutely.
His story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of education.
It's a story that deserves to be read, discussed,
Yeah.
and reflected upon by every generation.
Yeah, reading Douglass's narrative isn't just about understanding history.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the capacity for both immense cruelty and incredible compassion that exists within humanity. It's about acknowledging the ongoing struggle for justice and recommitting ourselves to the pursuit of a more equitable society.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener?
Right.
We encourage you to seek out Douglass's full narrative and immerse yourself in his powerful words.
Let his story challenge your assumptions.
Yeah.
Ignite your passion for justice and inspire you to become an agent of change in your own community.
Understanding the brutal realities of slavery,
Right.
as experienced by Douglass,
Yeah.
is crucial to understanding the complexities of freedom and equality today.
It's a history that we can't afford to forget, a legacy that we must continue to grapple with if we truly want to create a more just and compassionate world.
That's a powerful message to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and work of Frederick Douglass.
It was my pleasure.
Remember, knowledge is power, and the pursuit of justice is a journey we must all undertake together.